right, we've got our piece here and we are ready to start painting or coloring our roses in with our embossing glaze. Now, these are the colors that I used for the card sample. Villanous Potion, Kitch Flamingo, Saltwater Taffy, Rustic Wilderness, and Peeled Paint. They just came out with some new colors, so I'm going to take those two out and I'm going to incorporate the new colors in what I'm demoing today. I'll have all the colors for the ones that I've used on the supply list, but just to see the difference in the colors. I really like that combination together. This purple is just a little bit lighter, and then we've got two pinks rather than one that is like a peachy color. So that's what we're going to do for this one here. So I'm going to put this to the side, and you're going to need a pair of tweezers that you hold closed that has a really pointed tip to it. And we are going to pick all of the pieces out for the leaves. This is one of those things that does get a little bit tedious, but the effect is amazing. So the easiest way to do it is to take one of the pointed ends of your tweezers, put it underneath the backing, and then pick it up. And obviously, the more intricate die you have, the more detail there's going to be, the longer it's going to take. But it's one of those things that I don't mind this process. I love the way it looks at the end. And I find it calming, satisfying, mesmerizing, whatever you want to use to be pulling all these pieces off. My husband walked in on me creating one of the samples, and immediately was like, there's no way I could do that. That's too tedious. It's funny because he's in construction, and that's why he doesn't like doing finishing work. It's too tedious, and he'd rather do the foundations and build the walls. All right. Almost have all the leaf pieces off. Now, some of the pieces are a little bit harder to see than others. If by chance you're not sure if you've taken a backing off, there's a super easy way to check. You just take the tip of your tweezers and you'll be able to feel the sticky of the tape. And if by chance you haven't taken it off, it won't, like, you'll feel the difference totally. Oops. Now, I didn't intend to take that branch off. And sometimes you can put the pieces back, but I'll tell you right now, often when you put the pieces back, it has lifted up a little bit and you'll get a little bit of powder underneath there. So just be aware of that. So I'm going to put the powder over the whole thing. It is going to stick to the backing. It just does. There's no way to get around that. I'm going to take this excess, put it back in the container. And anytime you hear this off camera, this is what I'm doing. And it's just taking all the powder off of the paper. For this particular part, I'm still going to be using the same color, but this is especially important when you're going to a different color because we don't want to be contaminating our powders. So I'm going to take a piece of that backing. I just have a piece here that I rip off pieces. Every time I have a new color, I use a new piece. And I'm going to use a circular motion, and I'm going to burnish that powder onto that tape. And that makes sure that it has really good contact with the tape. This I'm just tossing in the garbage because I don't need it anymore. And then I'm going to take a brush and brush off the excess. If you have a little bit of powder that is still sticking to that backing, don't worry about it. But what I did find without burnishing it, if you go and brush your backing, you start taking some of the powder off of your leaves, and we would like to have as much powder as possible on there. So this also goes in that container. Clean my paper off because the next color is going to be a different one. And then I'm going to use my heat gun and I'm going to melt it. was probably pretty hard to see on camera the heat or the powder melting, but it was easy to see in person. So now I'm going to do the branches. I'm going to do it in the darker green. This particular one here is stuck to the flower, so I'm just going to use my X-Acto knife and cut it there so that I have a green branch and the flower is a different color. There we go. And I would have done that branch, but the tape already came off. This particular piece here, when I pulled the tape off, I must have pulled some cardstock off with it because it's not, the powder didn't stick to it, and I can see that there's no backing there. I'm going to leave that. If by chance that bothers you, you could take a glue pen at the end and you could put some powder there and fix it. There we go. So that one there's only 2 different sections that have that color, so I just poured it over those things. There's no point in pouring it over areas that there's nothing for it to stick to. I'm going to take another piece of cardstock, burnish that in, and then I'm going to brush the excess off. There we go. This color, there was very little, and that's okay. When I'm cleaning that paper off by flicking it, typically I'm doing it right over top of my garbage can so that I'm not making a big mess. Just a little tip. And typically when I do this technique, I work from my dark colors to my light colors. These are, especially those two, are kind of all the same darkness, so it's not quite as vital, but when I'm doing this technique I work from dark to light. You'll notice, especially if you have some really light colors, sometimes you'll get a few flecks of the dark powder in there and it just affects it. And especially like this background, we're going to be doing some clear powder to do the background, and I don't want to have drops of or dots of purple, pink, and stuff like that in there. So this one here, I'm going to do the purple first, and I'm just doing some of the outer petals from my flowers. You could go ahead and do your flowers all one color, absolutely. I just thought it would look pretty with a few different colors from dark to light going to the center. And then you may notice different layers. Like I have some greens here that are just kind of finely in the grooves of the tape. I don't worry about it. There's nothing I can do about it. It just happens, so I'm going to go with it. Now burnish it and then heat it. So you know what to do now with the different tape backings, the different colors. So I'm going to be fast forwarding the different sections and just showing you the heat embossing.